Yeah. Hello, everybody. What I will talk about is a green hydrogen strategy of a utility of Vattenfall. Maybe first a few words. Why hydrogen? We see hydrogen as an essential part of the energy transition. It's, I guess, for a very long time we thought that there will be an all-electric society, but not we, but a lot of actors in this energy transition figured out that we need a green molecule as well. Of course, this needs to be produced with renewables, and this is what we are put in our strategies, that we produce green hydrogen and out from green electricity. Let me just start with a short view on Vattenfall. I guess I don't have to go too much into detail here. It's just an overview. We are one of the biggest utilities especially in northern and middle Europe, and our electricity generation is some 130 terawatt hours. What we have to face if it comes to CO2 reductions, this is our core markets, Sweden, Netherlands and Germany. We have to cut CO2 emissions extremely. And to do this, we need to install a lot of renewables, of course, or green CO2-free solutions. And this can be done, and there we are quite active right now with a significant growth of renewable power generation. What you see on this map is our wind farms in our core markets, UK, Netherlands, Germany, Sweden and Denmark. The blue dots are offshore wind farms, so we are number 2 in Europe on offshore. At present, we're running 3.2 gigawatt of assets in renewables, and we will increase this up to 8 gigawatt in 2025. So it's a huge growth in renewable generation, and especially for us, especially in offshore wind. So why hydrogen? Why do we need this? The main thing has been what we did up to now in the energy transition. We focused almost solely on electricity, and there we are quite good. In Germany, for instance, we have 42% of renewables in our system, but we didn't have a focus up to now on other energy sectors like mobility, transportation, industry and heating, and we have to decarbonize this as well. And this cannot always be done with electricity. There we need a green molecule, a green gas to decarbonize the other energy sectors as well. And as I mentioned, this can be done with hydrogen. Another issue with hydrogen is that we are building more and more volatile energy production with wind power and solar power. And we need something to balance our grid, to keep the grid stable, to serve our customers always with electricity. And to do this, we need something, a balancing energy carrier, and this can be hydrogen. It can quite easily produce with electrolysis from renewable energies, and can be stored and used for electricity generation, or or applied in transportation industry or heating devices. So this, in this case, with hydrogen, renewable energy generation can be increased, and we have a much more demand, a higher demand of renewables as well. The good thing is that we can fulfill the climate targets with hydrogen of other sectors like transport, industry and heat. So what we did in the last year is, where's the business with hydrogen? So of course it's good to decarbonize, but someone has to pay for it. And who will pay for it? Where are the markets for hydrogen? We know that green hydrogen is more expensive compared to grey hydrogen. If we exclude all taxes, fees, levies on electricity, it's almost double the price of grey hydrogen. And we need some early markets to start the business, to scale it up. And we looked into this in the last year, and the most attractive markets are transportation. It's heavy-duty transportation, it's trains, buses, trucks, and it's industry. Some parts of the industry, not each and every industry, but some parts of the industry like refineries. The market is there where there already is an obligation to do something, and this is in many cases in transport. They have to decrease their CO2 emissions in transport, and battery electric vehicles doesn't fit for everything. So especially for heavy duty, we will need an other energy carrier like hydrogen. For instance, refineries have already an obligation to reduce CO2 emissions. There we can start with the market to scale it up this we need in the near future to come into the business, which is not there yet. What we hear about hydrogen today is all small, tiny projects tested, but we need to go into the market very soon. So this is the market we are looking into, and a few initiatives we have with green hydrogen is, or with hydrogen in general, is hybrid. This is a steel project in northern Sweden. We have close to Hamburg in Germany a large-scale electrolysis for SNG generation. In Netherlands, in Eemshaven, we are operating a gas-fired power plant, and we intend to convert one of these blocks. It's 430 megawatts to hydrogen. In this case, not green hydrogen, it's blue hydrogen. It's from natural gas with CCS. We're looking into methanol production, CO2-free methanol production. We have a cooperation with a refinery in Sweden, and we are looking into various applications in the transport sector. So these are the projects we have in Europe in our core countries. All these green H2 dots are our projects and initiatives. And this is in a sum, this is in a generation capacity, electrolyzer capacity of some 180 megawatts, what we are planning right now. I will two examples. One is the hybrid initiative. This is a steel initiative in northern Sweden. So what we intend to do here, to eliminate CO2 emissions in steel making. So we're using hydrogen to reduce ore, which is done today with coke in general, and reduce this with hydrogen and produce thereby CO2-free steel. The process is shown here, and the old technology on the left hand, the new technology on the right hand. And the numbers you see here, it's to produce one emissions or energy need to produce 1 kilogram or 1 ton of crude steel. And what we do in fact is that we are placing this coal, which is the second from the bottom on the left hand. It's the coal, we replace it with renewable energy, which is right on the bottom with renewable electricity. And there we have it's only 25 kilograms CO2 instead of 1.6 tons of CO2. So we are placing here coal with electricity, and thereby produce emission-free steel. This is a cooperation project with SSAB and LKAB. This is a steel producing company and the mining company in Sweden. Another example we are doing in northern Germany is high-syn gas, which is a project to produce synthetic gas with green electricity. So first we produce hydrogen, and then we have a methanation process after this to produce this green natural gas. And this can be fed into the natural gas grid, so we can use existing infrastructure and to green natural gas as well. This will be a 50 megawatt electrolysis plant producing 20 tons of hydrogen per day, and with the methanization 40 tons of synthetic natural gas per day. Of course, what I have to say is this synthetic natural gas is more expensive than natural gas from exploration, but we have customers here who intend to be green. To green their, one is a big logistic company. They want to green their truck fleet with gas, natural gas, and there will be the off-taker for this synthetic natural gas. So they pay more because, what I said, all these green solutions are more expensive than gray solutions. This was the same with renewables in the very beginning. Now we are better with renewables. And we have the same issue with hydrogen today. So we need customers with a willingness to pay, customers who already have an obligation to pay, to be more green, and this will be the early markets. One additional thing I need to mention here is we need a supporting regulatory framework. So the regulatory framework we have today was built for this old system with the silos of electricity, silo of gas, silo of oil, and so on. And we have to overcome these barriers, and we need a regulatory framework to support this. I don't want to go through all these issues, but we need to change this. Otherwise, this hydrogen business will not fly. So we have to do a lot here, but I guess we are in a good way. Many European countries and even the European Commission are doing a lot to enable hydrogen as an energy carrier, green energy carrier for the future. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I am going to take another moment to answer that question that we had earlier, Raymond, and see if there's another one out there. Yeah, we have a microphone in a box that we can throw.
Yeah, no, it's working. So just to come back on the question for Nikola project, in fact, the stations there are going to be bigger than what you mentioned. There we're talking about 8 tons a day of hydrogen, so it's around 20 megawatt plants, not PEM technology, but alkaline technology. The objective there is to get the power from the grid, but try to get 40% renewable through credits area. So trying to decarbonize actually this process, knowing that you want to demonstrate the hydrogen trucks initially.
Is there another?
My question is, if we...
Could you give us your name and who you're
My name is Pinkas. I'm from Poland, and I have few questions, I would say. Firstly...
Could you just ask one?
Yeah, okay. So let us think about that we have already developed some cars for hydrogen on the market. And what would happen if the gray hydrogen would take over? Because it's cheap, so the cars would be on the streets. The hydrogen petrol station would be on the streets, and then a gray hydrogen as cheaper would take over instead of the green.
I think I see where you're coming from. If green hydrogen is disadvantaged, and that comes to the point that a couple of our speakers have brought up about the framework for bringing this forward. Does anybody want to come back on that?
You mean the framework or the question? Yeah. I will try to answer. We are not a car manufacturer, and on the other hand, they have strict obligations to reduce CO2 emissions as well. This is according to European regulations, and they have to cut CO2 emissions, cut CO2 emissions. And if we look into the whole production chain of hydrogen, grey hydrogen, this doesn't help so much if we include the whole production chain to reduce the CO2 emissions. So we need to go green here as well. The market for green hydrogen in transportation is quite attractive, since it's a very high-priced energy market. Fuel is at the pump station is very expensive if you compare it to what you pay at home for heating or whatever, and therefore it's attractive. And the gap is not so much if I compare it with other energy carriers or other competing energy carriers.
Yeah, just to add to that, if you were to use grey hydrogen, as you put it, for transportation, I think that would be a missed opportunity. In terms of the whole point of going to hydrogen for transportation use is it allows you to decarbonise, and really important that didn't happen, because all that would do would displace the CO2 emissions, and often the overall round trip efficiency of producing the hydrogen elsewhere and shipping it in, putting it into vehicles might increase the CO2 emissions, which obviously is not advantageous. There'd be arguably you'd get an emissions reduction, sort of particulates and NOx and so on, local emissions reduction, but an overall, questionable at best benefit for CO2 emissions, and that would be something we would need to. There'd just be no point from an emissions reduction point of view.
Other questions?
Hi, thanks so much for the presentation. It was really interesting. My name's Oliver Agg. I'm the Commercial Director at the European Marine Energy Centre. We've been working on a number of R&D projects at our facility and across the Orkney Islands, and currently are looking at commercial applications for green hydrogen projects across Scotland and wider parts of Europe. One of the questions I've got is the conundrum we're working on at the moment is trying to work out how you line up the supply-demand question. We talked a bit about the higher price that you can get if you're converting your hydrogen into a transport fuel, but the difficulty is then if you're trying to get the investment together to build the green hydrogen production facility in the first place, how do you square off the long-term demand and the difficulty in trying to get those supply contracts in place. Just interested in people's strategies and what you can do to put in place, the duration of the projects and the payback periods you're looking for.
Does anyone want to pick up on that contracting question?
Without wishing to hog it, I can take it. So no, you raise a very valid point, and it's a big issue with, I think generally there's a consensus on the promise of a hydrogen economy. It's just making it happen that is difficult, because people expect prices of electrolyzers to fall, and therefore the production costs of hydrogen. Renewable energy prices are also coming down, so the production of costs of hydrogen in the future, green hydrogen in the future, is like to be lower. So what's the incentive to make that investment now? And that was really the idea behind the Goodwood Festival of Speed system. So I remember in my talk the big red tube trailer and the fuel cell, and the idea behind that was to start in the market where energy prices are the highest. That's transportation, as a colleague from Vattenfall mentioned, but start with in a way that can become, you can start small and then scale up rapidly. So by going with transportation, you can start having a few hydrogen refueling stations or a few battery electric vehicle recharging stations, and you can match that demand with your hydrogen production capability. So really, the strategy there was to start with the transport sector, which is sort of the easiest one from a commercial point of view, but also one where you can start really from a very low base and scale up. You haven't got to come straight in with the kind of hydrogen production capability you would need for running a significant fraction of a gas turbine on hydrogen, for example.
Maybe to just add on this, how we do this, hydrogen or green hydrogen is not a commodity yet. So it's a customized product, and when we start a project, we do this only if we have an off-taker. If we have a commitment of an off-taker with a certain time period, makes a contract with us, and he will buy this for this and this price. Otherwise, we are not going to invest.
Thank you. I think we're going to... one more response from Petter.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, it's what we've also found is that there's maybe these little microeconomies that are springing up around industrial sites. So we have a couple of partners in our consortium, and what they've done is they've encouraged their customers to pay a higher price for a carbon-free fuel, and that means electricity or steam. At the same time, then they're commoditizing it, so they have a network where they can provide the hydrogen either for transport or for power. In each instance, they've got a contract, a variable contract with a power taker or with a transport fuel taker. And then when they have a broad range of application, then they can throttle depending on what the need is in each one. So I think some diversification, but then also some local commitment from local customers is probably a key, at least to making it practical initially.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll have to leave it there, unfortunately. We've run out of time, but I've managed to retain all the speakers in front, so you can grab them and have one-to-one conversations with them if you get the chance. And of course, there's many opportunities to speak about them on their stands. And I will just leave you with a couple of thoughts from me. One is that discussing the market for renewable energy within the UK and elsewhere in Europe, we have seen periods that we refer to as price cannibalization, when there's a huge amount of renewables on the grid and the price collapses. But I rather like Petter's view of those as a green mountain on his graph that we can exploit and use for these new types of energy vectors. And the other is an interesting intersection between markets that already exist, although perhaps not at the commodity level for these molecules. Be interested to see whether you can leverage those small markets in ways like the local market that Petter referred to become a very big industry, and see when that will happen. I certainly expect to see a bigger area for this discussion next year, and some electrolyzers in the exhibition. But until we see that, I'd like to thank all of my speakers. Please thank them in the usual way. Applause. And thanks very much to you for your participation as well.